So hello to everyone. Thank you for showing up. And I would like to welcome you to the fourth CMR webinar from the series Migration and Cities, Managing the Crisis. The webinars are organized by the unit of Warsaw University, Center of Migration Research, and together with two partners, the Union of Polish Metropolises, which is association of 12 cities in Poland, and the Embassy of Switzerland. Thank you all for showing up today, for your interest in our webinars, and thank you to all the speakers, especially for finding your time, and especially for those who found it very short notice. The meeting is being recorded, and later you can watch us on CMR YouTube channel. The webinar is also streamed on Facebook. And as I mentioned before, this is a series of webinars. We meet on Fridays to discuss different challenges and to identify solutions in the context of humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. Today, we are going to focus on education. During the first hour, we'll discuss challenges and possible solutions, and we will try to look for best practices related to education of students with migration background and refugees. I would just like to briefly mention, because this will be more thoroughly discussed later, that Poland is facing unprecedented scale of migration. So far, around 3 million people from Ukraine crossed Polish borders, and up to 1.7 is already settling in Poland, precisely in Polish cities. Most of them are women with children. And this means that this is a huge challenge for Polish schools. So that's why we're here together to discuss the situation of Polish education system. We gathered with Polish and international speakers to share our experiences, hopefully exchange some good practices and knowledge. We will take a look at few cases. First, we will focus on general situation of Polish cities. We've focused on Gdańsk first, and in particular, just one particular high school there. Then we will discuss cases from UK, Canada, and from Northern Ireland. And hopefully during the last 40 minutes of our meeting, Marysia Złonkiewicz from initiative Chlebem i Solą will join us. Chlebem i Solą can be translated as bread and salt, which refers to Polish hospitality. So Marysia should share her experiences on education of refugees in Warsaw. Just one reminder, please, if you have any questions during the webinar, write them down in our chat on Facebook or on Zoom. During the last 30 minutes, we'll have Q&A section, but if any of you want to engage in discussion or answer questions, feel free to do it. Thank you, and I give the floor to my colleague, Michał Nowoszewski.
Thank you, Eva. So once again, we welcome you all at our panel. As you have noticed, we have a really great set of panelists today. As Marta mentioned, we will start with Marta Pietruszyńska from the University of Warsaw. Marta will speak about the general responses of the Polish education system to the influx of refugee children from Ukraine. So Marta, the floor is yours. Just one little comment. Each of the panelists has some 15 minutes for the presentation. So please stick to that if possible, of course. So Marta, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I think it's extremely important that we're talking about education as a separate topic, because it's really important part of refugees' life. And to start with, I will recall a little bit of memories of Polish school before the war. So Poland has previous good practice in teaching kids and youth with a migration background. Around since 2010, something like this, second decade of 21st century, many NGOs and also local authorities start to notice the problem of migrants pupils, and the system start to prepare to to introduce them into the school. So in the system, we already had a few things. So we had Polish language class. It's 5 hours per week for a student, so they can have additional Polish language classes. There is also a figure of cultural assistant. So this is a person that knows culture, language of the country of origin of children, and such person work in the school, work with pupils, work with their parents, work with teachers, and make the integration process easier. Also, there is before the war also there was idea of preparatory classes. So this was special classes where students could go and learn mainly the language and a little bit of culture. In the meantime, they could start to integrate with their own class, with students from this class, but mainly in these preparatory classes they were supposed to learn the language. And we had a lot of good practice from many NGOs that implement some tools to diagnose educational needs of pupils with migration background. I will just briefly add that also those students are Polish students who turn back from migration. So for instance, Polish students who turn back from, let's say, UK. And before the war, Poland had some influx of Ukrainian and Belarusian students. So I've checked, and since 2014, after the war started in Ukraine, in Donbas, and when Crimea was annexed, around few thousand students there were around few thousand Ukrainian and Belarusian students, and also some other foreign students in big cities, because migrants normally set up in the big cities. So schools in big cities somehow were prepared to work with those pupils. However, for instance, preparatory classes were not so common in Polish schools. I think in Poznań and in Wrocław and in Gdańsk, there were preparatory classes before the war. In Warsaw, there were rarely some, maybe 5 or up to 7. Now we have 150. And going to the statistics, so according to the Ministry of Education, this is the data from yesterday, there is around 200,000 students, foreign students in Polish schools. So there is 140,000 in primary schools. We have 40,000 in preschool, in kindergarten, and then there is 20 in secondary schools. And we can ask where is the rest of the children and the rest of the young people, because if we estimate that around 2 million people set up in Poland, let's say at least half of them they're minors, where are there? So according to the Ministry of Education claim that the rest of the children is in the online education in Ukrainian schools. So they're using online remote education to connect with the Ukrainian schools. I'm not sure if it's so, if really those students attend Ukrainian classes. And to show you also how big influx it is, I should say that we have this 200,000 children in Polish schools, foreign children from Ukraine, and then we have around 4.5 million Polish students. So this 200,000, it's a huge number. So now in Polish schools there are 4 paths for Ukrainian students to follow. So, or they can just attend in-class education with other pupils. So they're just added to a regular classroom, and they have the classmates, and they're just following the the Polish curriculum in Polish. There is this another path, so preparatory classes. Mainly they learn Polish language there, and they're slowly start to integrate with their Polish mates, for instance, by attending some art classes or PE classes, so those classes where you don't have to know language so good. There are some Ukrainian stationary schools. So also before the war, there were few schools in Poland that were following Ukrainian curriculum. And now those schools also have students from Ukraine. This is especially important while we're talking about pupils from 9th, 10th and 11th grade of Ukrainian primary school, because in Ukrainian the system is different. I will be talking about it more in a few seconds. So there is some group of students who are attending Ukrainian curriculum schools in Poland, and as Minister of Education said, majority of students, but we don't know how many, attend online education in Ukrainian system. I just learned yesterday that probably there will be in Poland will organize final exams for Ukrainian students in Ukrainian. So as now we have matura in Poland, so final exams for those who are finishing technical schools and high schools. Probably there will be also online final exams in Ukrainian system for those students who are in Poland. And in main cities, there are some special spaces equipped with computers, laptops, and with internet. So those students who attend online Ukrainian education can study. So this is another way how authorities, like local authorities, try to deal with this issue with big influx. So they're just giving some spaces where Ukrainian peoples can just use online education. And now what are the main challenges? So there is a big question: should we put Ukrainian and in general foreign students in preparatory classes, or they should start education in class with their Polish classmates? And of course, when the number of students is not so high in the school, it's always good to put them into the class with their Polish mates and have this cultural assistant who will easier the integration process. But now when we have so many students, preparatory classes with extended Polish curriculum taught by not Polish language teachers, but by glottodidactics, so those who are teaching Polish as a foreign language. The preparatory classes are better practice. And just to show how this practice is used, in Warsaw, as I said before the war, there was around 5 to 10 preparatory classes. Now we have around 150. So mainly in, of course, in the primary schools. The other issue is issue related to discrimination and tension among Polish students and foreign students. As I work with the teachers, I learned that there is bigger and bigger tension and discrimination have started already. Just to give you simple example, what could cause this kind of trouble. So of course, Polish students learn some discriminatory practice at home, but also because Polish system is not prepared to accept a so big influx of refugee children, and there are not many good tools to deal with this situation. Teachers are left alone. In one of the schools, I learned that teachers, as a protest against lack of tools and lack of ways of assessing these Ukrainian students, because teachers now have to assess somehow those students who came to Poland just for last few months of the school year. So as a protest, they said, we will give all of them the highest grades, because Ministry of Education didn't give us any tools to do it in a different way. So we will protest and we'll give them the highest grades. And of course, this kind of situation caused some tension between Polish students and foreign students. And I think we will be facing more and more discrimination practice at schools, unfortunately. Another thing, I've already mentioned it, it's Polish language and challenges related to this. Unfortunately, the bad practice at school, and it has been since, I think, 20 years like this. If in school there is a foreign child, most of the time the language is taught to the child by the Polish language teacher. And of course, the methodology of learning Polish as a first language is totally different than teaching it as a foreign language. That's why we still need more and more practitioners who can teach Polish language as a foreign language. And the last thing it's challenging, it's the challenge of missing children. According to Ministry of Education, rest of children who are not attending Polish schools, so just to recall the number, there is 200,000 pupils and youth in Polish schools. The rest, so more or less around million and a half, is in online Ukrainian education system. I doubt it. And of course, the issue is also that some families are coming to Poland, then they're moving to another country, then they're turning back. So some children are in the process of migration and they don't know where in the end they will be. Some are turning back to Ukraine without noticing the schools. So schools have children, then the children is missing. So this is another challenge, to have this uncertainty where the children will be, if they will stay in Poland, if they will stay in the system, if they're turning back to Ukraine. And unfortunately, Polish Ministry of Education didn't give enough tools to the teachers and to the schools. Just to show you where are the main concerns of Polish Ministry of Education. So just 2 days ago, Polish Ministry of Education, together with Polish Institute of History, publish a book in Ukrainian about Polish history. The book will be sent to the schools, so Ukrainian pupils can learn Polish history as it should be. So they should know the right Polish history. And now there is no tools, for instance, about diagnosis of educational needs, or there is no tools other than those done by NGOs and before the war, how to teach the language to those students. So I think this example emphasized the most what is the attitudes of Polish Ministry of Education. So everything is on the shoulders of NGOs and local authorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta, for this, I believe, a very thorough outline of the context of the challenge that we are facing here in Poland. It was very informative. Thank you very much again. The second panelist will be Jolanta Grohala, who is obviously a practitioner, motivating teacher, bilingualism trainer, president of the Bilingual Poland Association, and owner of Jolanta Grohala Motivating Teacher brand. So a teacher, an entrepreneur, etc., etc. And Jolanta will be focusing on experiences from the UK system, and will try to point to the lessons that the Polish system and Polish teachers can learn from the British experiences. Jolanta, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Welcome everybody. I'm going to share my PowerPoint presentation. So let me, so tell me whether it works. Okay, so it should be visible on the whole monitor.
Yes, it's
so
good.
Is it visible? Okay, so welcome again. Thank you, Michał, for introducing me. Today I am a practitioner. I am a bilingual teacher and a teacher trainer. I used to teach and train teachers in United Kingdom, believe it or not. Me, Polish person, started from zero and ended up with hundreds of teachers and head teachers in local schools in Birmingham in England that I had the pleasure to teach. And I used to teach about 300 children, Polish, as well as the children from around the world. So fortunately, I had the pleasure to teach the children and refugee as well. So I'm also the president of Bilingual Poland Association, and mainly what I always highlight, I am the mother of a bilingual child who is also an immigrant to Poland because she's never been to Polish educational system. So she has started in secondary school. So I've got the experience, variety, and a very great experience that I'm going to share with you. So I didn't know, Martha, that your way of presentation will be data and statistics. But very, very briefly, before war, the latest statistic emphasizes the data from 2019. And as we see, the most people who emigrated from abroad to Poland and Polish educational system, they are Polish families and mixed families as well, which is 77% of the children, and Ukrainian 3%, and it was, even before war, the second dominant language in Poland and Polish educational system. So I came back from England in 2019. So I knew what my career path will be in Poland, which is the bilingualism, which is I am dedicated and dedicated on, to be honest with you. So I checked the data and I've researched it, and the total across the country, there are nearly 17,000 children from around the world. From Europe, 16,133. So the majority of the children who we've got in Polish schools are from Europe. And as you can see, the age 0 to 4, it's about 5,000, age 5 and 10, 2,000 children, including the children of compulsory schooling age, which is in Poland, as far as I understand still, because I'm quite fresh as well. The compulsory age is between 6 and 7. So then is a lower level of the age between 10 and 14, which is about 600 children, including my poor daughter, and age 15 and above the secondary 371. So it was in 2019. Sadly, Poland doesn't provide the statistic in schools that is practiced in UK, and this is the compulsory requirement for each single school in England. So each single professional in English school woken up in the middle of the night, we always knew how many children and where are they from. So, well, as Marta said, now suddenly we've got 1,900 Ukrainian children. So such a big proportion within 2 months. Why have I mentioned the figures? I mentioned the figures because what I'm doing at the moment, I am building up the understanding of emigration in Polish area, and what I have exposed to, I've been exposed to the stones on the road, unfortunately, and I thought that I was very optimistic checking the statistics that the schools are ready. Unfortunately, with hand of my heart, the schools are not ready. Why I know that? Because I support children and the families, the Polish families who arrived to the Polish educational system, and 90% of the parents are not happy about how the support is carried on. As Marta said, 2 hours for Polish extra lessons, and that's all. And this is what my daughter has been exposed to as well. And I'm talking through because I come from South Podkarpacie, so the south of Poland, we don't have anything to support even Polish children who speak Polish, understand Polish. They've got difficulties in subjects like geography, history, biology. So I thought we learned a lesson and we are getting prepared to admit the Ukrainian children, plus it's not only language, it's trauma too. So I'm going to share my knowledge and expertise that have been implemented in the UK system, and I base my experience on my own experience studying and working over 17 years. Each student, including myself, how teachers being prepared to teach in English mainstream classrooms. Don't forget, England is a multicultural country, so they've got the history in the back to deal with bilingualism or and refugee system, so it's nothing new to them. Being in uni, I had at least 3 modules that and they were dedicated to deal with children with special educational needs. So I don't call it a special educational needs. I always treat my children like children with additional needs, including the children who emigrated with learning difficulties and also with refugees. So it was compulsory module in each uni that was preparing the teachers for their professions. Unfortunately, in Poland, maybe I don't know, or maybe I'm not aware, the system doesn't allow the teachers having the history since I think 2010 at least. I don't know whether the universities has changed the agenda of training teachers or not. And my advice is to start it as soon as possible. Interestingly, as England being very bilingual and multicultural country, the only one module I had in terms of bilingualism. And guess who delivered the module? It was me, because I practiced, I studied in my own time, and I tried to be ready to support my children. And it was possible mission. So this is the appeal to Polish teachers. Yes, it is possible. Yes, it is achievable. Okay, so I will go through the position of Senko. So this is another thing that is this is the position in each English school, and Senko means special needs coordinator. What does she do? And this role is crucial. It's not pedagogist, it's the professionalist who oversees the day-to-day operation of the schools based on SEND, means special education needs policy. So each school has got the policy. It's a compulsory for each single school, and no matter if we've got bilingual children, refugee children or not. And Senko coordinates provision for children with special needs, and most importantly, works closely and advises teachers. So each teacher must follow the training every single year. Okay, it's a fresh start every single year. We met together. The school was totally closed for the children, and we sat, and mostly their training, so they were dedicated to special educational needs that implements refugee support for refugees as well. So the policy for each school. Now, teaching assistants were allocated to work with children with special, so additional needs provision. Of course, rightly trained and prepared by myself as a bilingual teacher, and Senko as well. So me as a language assistant and bilingual teacher, we work together closely to meet those children's needs. Of course, each special educational coordinator works closely with parents, and it's up to him and or the Senko and myself to know the children's background, and it was fixed. Okay, I had no choice. So if anybody woke me up in the middle of the night, I knew everything about my children, and I had 300 on my list to look after and provide the effective support. And of course, Senko will organize the training. So it is the initial professional who was always responsible to deliver the training. And most importantly, Senko supported us and worked closely with external agencies, including local authorities, educational psychology service, health and social services, and we worked very closely with asylum seeker and refugee support team, and we welcomed them, not maybe often, but when we need it, okay, through the Senko person. And of course, the support team built the capacity and met with us during at least once per year. Okay, so I have mentioned about teaching assistants and language assistants role, which was crucial. Okay, so they were trained, and so the small group or one-to-one provision have been implemented, and they were trained accurately on on the daily basis. Now, refugee, how teacher sees a new child in her or his multicultural classroom. This is my experience from English school, and I put these in the right order. So this is the refugee, and there we mustn't forget that this is emigration. So it is the child who emigrated from different culture, from different background. And also I will concentrate on emotional development and then language, which is crucial, emotional development before intellectual or any educational process. So firstly, what each teacher knows. Each teacher knows the background of each child. Okay, so I was the person who was responsible to meet with the parents and the children prior the child started the school, and this is the system I have implemented in my system, and really worked over 17 years. So gathering information about the background, it's crucial. So I always knew whether the child has got learning difficulties, what is the English language level, whether the child is refugee, whether the child has got the refugee status or it is in process. Now, always what I did, I implemented a specific integration system in class. What does it mean? Each class teacher knew about what and how many children are going to join the class, and this is crucial. So information didn't stuck in the office area. So it has been said, it has been, the meeting has been allocated to talk to the teacher, and the teacher knew the background of each child. What I did, I talked to the class before this child joined us, and this is important to talk. Don't stress about every single detail. There's an overall background of the child, especially if we admitted the children with war trauma. Now, normally I allocated the buddy. Buddy is a friend. Fantastically, if the buddy child knew the language the new child spoke, but it's not necessary. We need the empathy, smile, and warmth. Now, we need to feel for a child. It's not only the trauma, it's not only the immigration, it's the language, which is the key to communication, which each child, bilingual or with a war trauma, needs. So what I did,
just
yes?
one short comment. You need to slowly go to the
okay. Yeah. Okay. So I implemented the vocabulary with the pictures of the emotional that each class teacher had to communicate with the child. Now, don't forget, if the child has got anxiety, now allow him or her to calm down. You can, but never talk in the language, the Polish language, and the language the child doesn't understand. It increased the anxiety. And finally, welcome booklet. Each child, and no matter what the background is, I produced a booklet with a picture of the teacher, teaching assistant, the what subjects, and when the school finishes and starts, and all information the child will know before the child starts the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I think it was very interesting combination of some general remarks on how the systems in Poland and UK are different or differ, and what are your personal experiences in teaching migrant children or children with migratory experiences. So the next person, thank you very much for this fascinating presentation.
Very welcome. Thank you.
The next person to take the floor is Dominika Schwarz from Zespół Szkół Ogólnokształcących number 8 in Gdańsk, who will speak about their experiences, so Gdańsk experiences and their particular experiences in teaching children with migratory background. Dominika, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having us meaning on behalf of the whole school community and the headmistress, of course. Thank you for the previous presentation. I'm so relieved that somehow subconsciously we tend to do these things without even this perfect training and assistance, that somehow this empathy helps at school. So I would like to begin with, oh my gosh, yes, thank God. I would like to begin with the top of the ladder. So what it actually looks like in the region. This will be the short part. So as you can see in Pomeranian Vyvioziship Marshall's project, which is called A Joining In School, that has started just after the war started, unfortunately. And what it consists of is that it's pursued in 30 schools in the district, in the region. And it actually includes the trainings for the headmasters and all the executive staff, as well as for the form tutors and counselors and psychologists. Also the trainings of Polish teachers as a foreign language, which is very, very, very important, as the previous panelists have mentioned already. It also provides the materials and consulting. It's all in the assumption, of course. There's this special coordinator who deals only with this part of the problem with the schools, and the staff and the headmasters can just turn to this person whenever they need to. Going one step lower to Gdańsk, so how the city deals with the situation is that Gdańsk authorities have created this support model of integration of immigrants. And the main thing is this holistic attitude, which in the idea, and I hope, and we all hope that it works like that, it covers all aspects of life, all areas. So it's not only the school, it's also to find the job for the immigrants, to deal with the accommodation, to help with the material help, to help with the psychological help. Everything comes together in this idea. And it is coordinated by Gdańsk Pomaga, Gdańsk Helps, and the support center of immigrants. And this networking self-help is vital here. So we really count on the fact that we do cooperate. When we invite the family to school, we try to know the whole background. We help as much as we can as the whole community. Actually, one of the classrooms is still, has been transformed into a warehouse, which is still everything that is needed is just flowing in and going out. So it's constant help. So this holistic attitude. Also in Gdańsk, like I think Marta mentioned that this attitude, general attitude, is to accept students to already existing classes, so that they join in and they become students, one of the students from in Polish classes. Preparatory classes are supposed to be only in unique cases, usually in secondary schools, in high schools, when maybe this the youth has bigger problems with associating with the place and with the school and the traumatic experience. And now the last step down is, I would like to welcome you in our school, which is a huge one. Like you mentioned, it's a unit of schools. We have two. We have primary school and high school. And now today, the number of students that we've accepted from Ukraine is 103. So in each class, usually in secondary, in primary school, in each class there are 2-3 children already studying and trying to fit in. In high school we have less. I think it's the matter of age. I think it's also the matter of this online possibility of finishing the school, but we also have students like that. And what I did yesterday, because I just found yesterday about this amazing meeting, is that I asked my fellow colleagues, my fellow teachers, what is that you do that you actually make it work. So I'm going to be talking about things high school teachers do to make the lesson work and to make the students feel like they are a part of it. So, for example, during the lesson, a history teacher said that, for example, for her, for now, ever since 2 weeks she had these students, is that her idea is to always prepare about 5 Polish words, 5 Polish sentences or phrases connected strictly with the topic she's going to run. She prepares it, of course, ahead on some sort of a worksheet or a glossary. And their task is to, of course, take part in the lesson. They can also search any information during the lesson in their own language. They are welcome to do it. But this is the obligatory part, to learn them by heart, these 5 Polish things that she wants them to remember. An IT teacher, for instance, he texted me that actually all my colleagues said that, and it was pretty loud, that the only thing they are going to assess and grade, for now at least, for this beginning, because it's just the beginning, is their engagement, is their how much they're into it, and just the general attitude. It's not going to be just the knowledge, because it's just impossible for now, when they're not able to speak Polish and cover all the material. In chemistry, we have this amazing situation because our teacher is bilingual. She knows Russian, so she prepares 2 whiteboards, one in Russian, one in Polish. So they have this opportunity to use both of the languages, and also take regular part in the lessons. Math teacher said he uses also some apps to just translate. He helps them with the symbols if it's needed. And of course, always the students are also asked to be the assistants. Like this buddy you mentioned, we really use our students to help the students to that come. In biology, it's very similar, as you can observe, that the tasks are backed up by glossary. And that she grades the work, she's basically observing the engagement itself. The supporting teacher, we have one in high school, and it's also an amazing help. What she said is that every time we had, even before the war, we had this experience with lots of immigrants, she always made them join all the projects that are run at school. They are very social, and it helped them to integrate also not just with the classmates, but also people from all around the school. She mentioned a very important thing, that every time a student were supposed to join the class, and it happens now also, is preparing the class itself. It's organizing the lesson, discussing to them about the culture, the customs, the religion, any possibilities that they might be facing. Very important, as you can see, I have this stars 1 and 2, is cooperating with parents. And I would like to tell you the short stories. For example, close cooperation with parents, knowing the background, knowing how to deal with a child is essential. She told me a story about 2 boys coming to our school. They were Ukrainian, they were Muslim. And in the very beginning, she faced problems with communicating with them, in a meaning, whenever she asked them to do something, they would be very reserved, they wouldn't like to do it. She had many talks with the parents where the mother explained the role of a boy, even in family, the role of a man, and gave her some piece of advice how to address them. And when she started, she changed not maybe the tone, but the politeness strategy. And she asked them in a way if they would be so kind to do it. And they had this feeling that they are deciding if they're doing it. From that moment on, there was no problem. The cooperation and the relation and the rapport between them was perfect. Second star is for using the parents and keeping them close. In our school, we are so lucky to have, I think the mother is from Belarus, and the moment the war started, her son, he's in primary school, he told his mom, she's a psychologist, she's a trained psychologist, Mom, you have to come to school, you have to help everybody. So whenever there's a family coming to our school, she's on a call and she deals with the whole family. She helps them with the trauma. She helps them with any psychological needs that is possibly just needed. So this parenting and this knowing the background and this constant relation and being in contact is very, very vital. Then the form teachers texted me that they are trying to get as much help from the students whenever the student comes. And we have a call from the top that please come, you have a new student tomorrow. We form this welcoming circle, this group that takes care of a student who comes and who joins us, shows around the school, introduces the teachers, shows the classrooms, and sticks with him or her for the long, in the beginning, at least to feel safe, comfortable, and welcomed. We very often use the experience of our already accepted students who have been in our school, for example, for a year or two, and they are huge help with the language and the welcoming party. They also mentioned this preparing them ahead, like the classmates who are welcoming the immigrant. It's very, very important. Recently, we also accepted a boy from Afghanistan. His family are refugees, and the class, for example, after a week, they organized him this surprise birthday party. And he was so shocked because they don't celebrate parties. He was very moved, and he actually said that he's so happy that they want to talk to him, that they are welcoming, and he feels so great about it. So these tiny gestures, they do make huge difference, especially in the beginning. Polish teacher, she said that she translates the instructions, and whenever there's a work, there's something to work on and to write, for example, they can do it in their own language if they feel comfortable. But later on, she translates that with them. She presents them to the other students in Polish. So they have this idea of, they have this opportunity to listen to their own words in Polish language also before they learn it themselves. And hence it's on group work also. The other Polish teacher, this is a different story. She works mainly in primary school, and she has experience, and she's a trained Polish teacher as a foreign language. So her attitude is completely different. She uses only Polish, and the only helps that she organizes for the class are done in a way that no Russian, no Ukrainian, no other language is used. She knows it. She knows the techniques, and we had numbers of meetings, and I hope we will soon, the staff in our school will become much more confident in doing that, especially so that this Polish language will be just easier to acquire. German teacher, she involves other students to help them to communicate in English or Polish and to understand the assignments. She said that she was very stressed in the beginning. We have 2 German teachers in high school, because all the students that joined us, they have no experience with German language. So this is just the first time they have to deal with it. And somehow they found this idea of Pictionaries, of students and group work, and it works. Somehow just all those teachers said that students who came and however traumatic that was for them, it actually works on the lesson. They are part of a group and they are cooperating with others. With English, we teach foreign language, so we just simply adjust the needs. We just simply adjust the needs to the level. We use all the possible apps, dictionaries, etc., etc. So I think with foreign language teachers, I'm sorry, it's much easier. Okay, I'm going to the end. I'm really talking fast, not to cross the time. So we also created this idea of how we see it. Like I mentioned before, we had numbers of meetings as a school community, teachers, supporting teachers, and we discussed it a lot. The problem of grading that was mentioned before, not to cause the problems between peers. Of course, we decided not to grade them today with 1, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s because it's just impossible. So we try to adjust our techniques and the way they work on the lesson so that we can somehow assess their involvement in the class. And hopefully the other students also observe that we are trying to make everybody work together. And I think in high school, maybe it's much easier with the understanding and the empathy of older students. So these dots, what we have here, messenger groups, as probably everyone here has had this experience ever since the pandemic started. We are just overwhelmed with the number of them. However, in school community, meaning class, having a group as a form teacher with my own class is very helpful. So the moment we have a new student, we just enhance the belonging, we just have him on the group, on the private group that students have, and it really makes the difference. We involve the class, the students, and the teachers. We have this situation, we have had this situation like recently with this, with Abdul, Afghan student, and he was closely taken under this umbrella of one teacher who helped him get adjusted. It's very helpful, at least in the very beginning. Later on, we do think that independence is very important, but not in the first weeks of joining us, absolutely. The third dot, asking the other foreign students for help, is absolutely priceless because they are the living proof that it can be done for those scared students that just crossed the huge building and they don't understand the language. Looking after them thoroughly in the first days, very important, I think, the most. And looking at us as the teaching staff, the acceptance, the patience, and the creativity for the next task, so that it actually works. Waiting again, like you mentioned before, for the Ministry of Education to come up with maybe even better solutions. But for now, we have to deal with ourselves so that the students are not lost and we're not lost with them. And I guess I will thank you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation, and thank you very much for sharing your experiences and tips how to work with immigrant children. I think this is very helpful, as well as your comments on how your work fits into the general Gdańsk system, so to speak. I think it was very interesting, and thank you very much again. So our next panelist is Maria Teresa Garcia from Canada this time. Maria Teresa is a multicultural liaison officer, program manager in Ottawa Community Immigrant Services organization, and she will be speaking about experiences of education and integration of newcomers in the classrooms in Ontario. So, Maria Teresa,
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon for you. So thank you very much for this invitation to share some of the best practices. As you know, Canada has a huge immigrants amount of newcomers at the schools. Canada has 29.6% of first and second generation students in the classroom, and Ottawa has 26%. So addressing the challenges of education means not only for newcomer students adapting to the culture, but school boards of education adapting and the community as a whole, welcoming and adapting. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint presentation that I have for you. A second, please. Okay, so the program that I manage, so just here I am mentioning all the, if you want to look at the Immigration Canada website, you will be able to see all the logic model services, direct services, indirect services, the government of Ontario, they have the newcomer settlement program, settlement agencies, the OCISO, the organization that I work, is called settlement agencies. For example, just to say, in Ottawa, which is a city of 1.5 million, we have 11 settlement agencies that collaborate with the adaptation and integration of newcomers. Of course, the Ministry of Education, I am going to send you this presentation with a very interesting document here. Is about all the practices and expectations regarding the implementation of policies of inclusion and equity in all programs that you will be able to see. Anyway, I'm going to focus too, because the presentation is very fast. So the most important focus, there are 5 focus in the classroom in Ontario. Language support. Language, as we know, is the main challenge that children face when they come and they cannot communicate. School provides assessment of languages, intensive teaching of language of instruction, transitional classes, training teachers to teach the domain language as a second language. Language training and homework support after school, especially in high schools. Mother tongue instruction in the international program. Because in Canada, there is the belief that in order for children to integrate into the new society, is very important that children keep their own mother tongue. So there is a lot of schools here that promote that, and it's one of the things that teachers support. Of course, academic supports, schools provide different levels based on the student need and capacity. Regular class with indirect supports, the students are placed in regular classroom for entire day, and the teacher receives specialized consultative services. A regular class with resources assistance. The student is placed in regular class for most of the day and receive specialized instruction individually or in a small group. Regular class with withdrawal assistance, the students are placed in the regular classroom and receive instruction outside of the classroom for less than 50% of the school day. So there are different modalities to provide academic support, depending on the modality and depending on the category of the student. We have, of course, the promoting inclusive education and friendly learning environment. This is the belief that besides education, welcoming is very important. Building all those proud of their own culture. Bullying and psychological well-being. Providing emotional and psychological support through following Ontario's bullying prevention and mental health strategy, and providing social worker services for the students who need it. Ensuring equity and respecting self-disclosure. Based on Ontario's equity and inclusive education, policy, all children and students will be inspired to grow in a very inclusive and intercultural learning environment. That's why all schools here celebrate the culture of many of all the students. Every month you will see how people celebrate the culture of the students. Of course, addressing low socioeconomic status. So in all schools, in all Ontario, they have identified all the schools with a lower socioeconomic status, and of course they provide services special for the families to integrate into the culture, to participate in school activities. Increasing parental involvement. This is the fifth aspect. The Ministry of Education mandates that schools and districts build a relationship with parents as well as a school community. Ontario's parent engaged policy is an essential component of Ontario's equity and inclusive education. Now I'm going to speak briefly about the program that I manage, that are multicultural liaison officers. So as you know, there is a culture shock curve that I think all of you are aware. These are the challenges that we have experienced with English language learner students: connectivity, parental support, student engagement, understanding distance learning, all the challenges that we have been experiencing during the pandemic. Going to go quickly to MLOs. The program that I manage, we have multicultural liaison officers. I have 30 liaison officers in all Ottawa schools, not all. Particularly when schools have English as a second language programs. So we have between, now we say 25, but now they have 30. They have different professional backgrounds and speak different language, and they offer, of course, advice, orientation. They liaise with community organizations, and basically they help parents to navigate the education system. These are the languages that they speak. We have also translators that we call community facilitators. Those are, in addition to the MLOs, the multicultural liaison officer, this is, let's say, the group that I work directly who speak all these languages. I have community facilitators that are interpreters ad hoc who speak additional languages. So as you know, huge support for families. Usually, newcomer parents and students learn about the MLO program at the welcoming centers, let's say at the registration centers, because our organization has a partnership with the two school boards, the public school board, Catholic school board, and there is another program exactly like I will manage with the French school board. So MLOs assess the families, parents, and students. So MLOs provide service to school staff to help with interpretation, behavior issues at the schools, the parents, and the students. So it's an assistance for the whole system, the families and the students. What MLOs do in schools, they orientate immigrant students and parents about the education system and their roles and responsibilities. They encourage students to get involved in the school, in person or through virtual meetings, advocate for students and parents. So they do a lot of mediations in schools. Mostly I have 30% of this group of 25 MLOs speak Arabic, because this is the main let's say, stream that we receive in Ottawa. They provide language and cultural interpretation at meetings involving staff, members, parents, and students. They provide external referrals to organizations. Of course, we have permanently, they have to advocate for newcomers at the schools, because as we were saying, at all the time is adaptation of the whole system in both ways. So we encourage, of course, MLOs to promote the role of the MLO at the schools, because of course 70% of the school is like they say here is mainstream. So they have to educate school staff about the role of the MLO. So they have a principal and other school staff, they provide a confidential space for the MLO to work, encourage a collegial environment, keep the MLO in the communication loop, inviting and introducing MLOs to multidisciplinary meetings, ESL teachers, school council chair, librarians, books and materials. So this is a huge partnership with both school boards. We are in permanent collaboration with them. We provide them with the best service in all the meetings. The MLO program has various and unique resources. Of course, a lot of materials, lot of training that they receive in education system, in all kind of adaptation, of course, to the Canadian society. So this is what I wanted to share with you all about the MLO program.
Thank you very much, Teresa. This was very fascinating piece on how your system works. By system, I mean how your organization works and how it helps teachers and schools to work with migrant children, and I think that was very helpful. So the next participant would be from Northern Ireland, Aisling O'Boyle, who is Director of Internationalization School of Social Sciences, Education and Social Work at Queen's University Belfast. And Aisling will introduce us to, experiences from Northern Ireland, basically. So Aisling, please take the floor. We can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's good.
Sincere apologies. Sorry about that. So, and can I just double check? Can you see my screen? Is that okay?
Yes, we can see.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks very much. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to both share my experiences, but also for the opportunity to listen to other colleagues. And I hope there's plenty of time for discussion later on as well. So, what I would like to talk about is I suppose a little bit of recent history. So I would like to talk through an example of the Syrian refugee resettlement program in Northern Ireland, just to, I suppose, contextualize Northern Ireland, as I'm sure you know, a very small country in the Northern Hemisphere coming out of years of conflict. So newcomers are sometimes considered new and only happened over the last sort of recent times. We know, of course, that's not true, but I suppose in terms of forced migration crises and Northern Ireland, most of our experience has begun really around Syrian refugees in 2015, and so that's what I would like to share with you today, and hopefully to draw some comparisons and some opportunities for sharing both what has already been mentioned, but also about recent history in Northern Ireland, hopefully potentially useful for our situation we're in at the moment in relation to Ukraine. So I hope this is of some use to you. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to talk about the Syrian refugee resettlement scheme in Northern Ireland, and to very briefly outline that. This was a somewhat unique scheme in Northern Ireland. It was, as I say, it was because it has actually stopped. The Syrian refugee resettlement scheme has paused and has changed into something sort of slightly different, but which I'm happy to talk about as well. But this vulnerable persons relocation scheme, as it was called, for Syrian refugees in Northern Ireland, was a government-funded and community sector together response, and it was designed to meet the needs of refugees coming under a vulnerable persons relocation scheme, and the organisations who came together were both statutory and non-statutory organisations, so organised through the Home Office in the UK, but very much operationalised in Northern Ireland through a consortium. And that consortium was made up of governmental organisations, so Department for Communities, Department for Education, as well as non-governmental organisations, which included Bryson Care, Barnardo's, British Red Cross, and other community groups as well, local community groups. I hope you can see my screen here, and as in previous speakers, I'm very happy to share these slides afterwards, as they may be a little too much information on them. But as you can see here, information about the scheme was made available through a number of both statutory and non-statutory organisations, and each had their own way of communicating about the scheme. Just to say a little bit more about it, so the Welcome Centre reception model was something, and is something in relation to the UK, was slightly unique, and it was designed to be set up as both a way of working across agencies, so interagency, as well as interdisciplinary, so taking both colleagues from taking educationalists, social workers, psychologists, and bringing, as well as medical teams, bringing them together. So what happened in this system was that, or in this model, was that upon their arrival in Northern Ireland, families, so family groups were welcomed by small teams from British Red Cross, and they were supported by healthcare professionals and others, and taken to welcome centres, which were situated centrally in the capital of Northern Ireland, in Belfast, where they were accommodated together for 5 nights. And over that period of 5 nights and 6 days, they received an intensive programme. So this was very much a family approach. So an intensive programme of support, which included health support. It included initial registration for statutory services, and also it included some English language training, and that was provided by volunteer organisations. So this was very much a mix of local NGOs, so local organisations, as well as statutory, as well as you see here, more well-known non-governmental organisations. And the idea was that within that 5 days, there would be intensive training and, I suppose, if you like, a little bit of beginning steps towards integration into a community. I suppose it is useful to say here is that once families departed from this Welcome Centre model, they went into their own housing, so their own privately rented accommodation, which was provided, and but dispersed throughout areas in Northern Ireland. Within this model, each family was also appointed to a key worker. So that key worker was really a support worker who would liaise with different practitioners in health, in education, in social services, to support the refugee families. And those support workers would stay with the family for a period of up to 12 weeks, visiting them on a daily basis. And thereafter, that support was stopped. So once after the 12 weeks was completed, it was very much, the emphasis was very much on the families themselves to begin to try to integrate and to live in Northern Ireland. The idea of having the support workers was very much about trying to build trusting relationships. That was the idea, trusting relationships over that period, so that so that there would be confidence built and there would be skill building throughout that time. I suppose, although, and I hope I don't take up too much time here, but I think it is an important point to mention that this model definitely, most certainly, would have an opportunity to bring about the kind of interagency collaboration, particularly for refugees coming from backgrounds of diverse needs. So not just in relation to trauma history, but also some refugee families would be coming from extended periods of displacement, so having lived in camps or lived in other resettlement contexts before coming to Northern Ireland. So this certainly would have a great benefit to the interagency collaboration. But I suppose, as you will all know, given the context we've just heard about, I suppose there was a little bit of how this was very much about reactive capacity building. So it was very quickly put together. The model itself was very quickly put together and changed and developed along the way. And just to give you an example of that, one of the leaflets that I mentioned about what is the Vulnerable Persons Relocation Scheme, this was issued in 2020. The scheme itself began in 2015. So just to give you an idea of some of both the challenges, but also clearly of the good work that this particular model did. One of the other things, just as I suppose to point out, was is a lot of the political discourse around the Vulnerable Persons Relocation Scheme was very much about empowering refugees to become independently as quickly as possible. And that really integration support would only be needed for a relatively short period of time, with the somewhat expectation that there would be no support necessary after that. This is somewhat in contrast to what we would know looking across the world in other contexts where, for example, young refugees may need a significant amount of time to be able to work successfully, to be able to learn successfully, and to be able to begin to be comfortable in a new environment, in a host environment. So certainly that's something that thinking about the future and thinking about new policies being implemented in other areas, certainly to think about longer term capacity building, longer term support. But just I suppose on the other side of that is one of the things that we most certainly do know about post-migration contexts is that success is indeed achievable. And the previous speaker mentioned about Canada and the amount of support that there is that it is clear that success in post-migration is most certainly achievable, and that most of the determinants of that are very much relying on what is possible in the country of settlement. It's not up to the individual themselves, but it's certainly about what kind of support, what kind of determinants are available, or what kind of factors have an influence in the country of settlement on the person themselves. And those are most certainly modifiable. So that, I think, is always a very positive thing to remember when we're also talking about challenges as well. I suppose one of the other things, just to go back about allowing support which is extended over time, is that we again know, particularly with children and young people, we know about the kind of major risk factors to their future, misunderstandings about school systems, low expectations from teachers, discrimination, trauma, and the impact of that on their participation and on their willingness or ability to engage. But we also know that in this post-migration context, we've got lots of good resources. We have families who have high motivation. We have, from my perspective, we've got language learners who are really keen to learn the new language that they are surrounded by. And we've heard in relation to one of the other previous speakers about buddy systems. So there are ways that we can modify what happens in resettlement countries and contexts, which can provide both short-term, mid-term, and more long-term support. So just to give you a couple just some examples from Northern Ireland, these seem very small in comparison to the work of the previous speaker in relation to Ottawa. But one of the things that the Education Authority in Northern Ireland did was to produce a number of videos in multiple languages about education in Northern Ireland. So we know that refugees and people coming into a new country, all education systems are different, and therefore becoming accustomed or becoming aware of how that education system works is really important. And that was what some of the refugee families find really, really useful, were these particular short videos which were available in multiple languages to get to know about what the education system is like, getting to know about what happens in relation to uniforms and school meals, also about school transport. And it also did include videos around some of the challenges around intercultural awareness for local populations, and also around how to respond to bullying behaviour as well. So this was a statutory, if you like, this was the School-Based Education Authority, some of their examples. What they also did recently was to organise a Good Practice Day for their teachers, and that was very much centred around making teachers aware that of the impact of trauma, making teachers, I suppose, to consider more trauma-informed teaching. This was particularly obviously relevant for those moving through forced migration coming out of war contexts. Also in relation to using stories for teaching. So, you know, having very locally produced materials where there are pictures of Belfast, there are, you know, examples of what buses look like in Belfast as opposed to what buses look like, you know, in London or elsewhere. And also part of this Good Practice Day for teachers was discussion and workshop around creating a welcoming and effective learning environment. And very much as the previous speakers have shown you, some brilliant examples have been shown today about how to do that. Also, I think what's also been very poignant in relation to Northern Ireland has been about the non-governmental and the local organisations. And I point out to here, one is the Belfast Unemployed Resource Centre and also Conway Education Centre, where these are local groups, these are local community groups who are offering support programs, English language programs, homework clubs, getting to know you sessions, and they're normally run by volunteers, so by local people. So it's an opportunity for facilitation around integration into the community. I'll stop now because I think I've just on time, I hope, just to say thank you very much for listening, and really appreciate and very happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I hope to hear how we can really use the information that we have here to really, you know, make life a lot better for those who have find themselves in situations of vulnerability, and those who are being forced into difficult circumstances. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Aisling, for this fascinating presentation. I think what we have heard was somehow a kind of description of some kind of a systemic approach, a model of how to deal with the relocation and integration of young refugees, and this was very interesting, and it was somehow accompanied by some very practical tips how it is exactly done. So thank you very much for that. That was very interesting.
Sorry, Michał.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt for a while, because I just noticed that Marysia Zwonkiewicz joined us.
Perfect.
So right before we start discussion, we can give her the floor and listen to her experience from Warsaw.
So
hi,
perfect.
Marysia.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, hello. I'm sorry I'm so late, but I was traveling to Warsaw. So should I share our experience right now?
Yes, of course. We just finished our last presentation. We were about to start a Q&A section, so you're right in time.
Ah, okay, great. So I will be quite I will try to be quite short. I'm working for an organization that established a program of educational support of refugee children. We started 5 years ago, and we started supporting 25 children, and right now there is more than 150. And each kids, like the support is individual, and each kid is supported by his own or her own volunteer that is meeting with her or him twice a week. And I'm just thinking, because I know that right now we are concentrating mostly, like the panel is also concentrating mostly on the Ukrainian refugees. And as we are working already from 5 years, only the really small number of the kids in our program came from Ukraine, and they are in a slightly different situation than Ukrainian children that are coming to Poland right now. So the kids that are in our program, they are either already granted with asylum in Poland, or they are in asylum seekers. They are in refugee procedure and waiting for a positive answer. What is not really the case of Ukrainian refugees, as they are still, those who are in Poland, most of them, they still don't know their future, and they are still not sure if they're gonna stay in Poland or they will come back to Ukraine even in the next school year. So our support is individual. We are cooperating with also with both school teachers and with parents. And the main challenge of our kids and also of the volunteers is the Polish language, Polish as foreign language, as even if the kids already speak Polish more or less fluently, they don't know the like the more sophisticated vocabulary that is needed at school, like, you know, not even if they know that everyday vocabulary that they are using on the streets or using during school breaks, they don't know the vocabulary that occur in stories for children, or you know, it's even hard to make the math exercise, because like the one that is described, like that is the exercise that is made in the longer story, like that you have to count, I don't know, something, and then the vocabulary occur. So this is the most challenging thing for them, and also for their parents, as the parents are not feeling comfortable in language and also in the school system. So our volunteers are a way filling that gap. They are helping children with homework, with repeating material, and they are also supporting parents, as one of our goals is to make parents as to make them also independent and to get them involved into school issues of their kids. I just noticed that one question has occurred, so I'm just thinking maybe I will just leave all the questions for the end. And our like we started the new semester before the war in Ukraine, so we don't have we didn't invite the newcomers to our program yet, but we are already thinking like how we should do it, because the number of the, like, till now we were trying to help all children that were asking for it, and right now I guess it will be completely impossible. And also there is a question of volunteers, as so many people is already involved in helping refugees, that people who want to help and people who have their free time and who are like open for helping, they are already busy. So it will be also the question of the lack of volunteers. And the other things that we know that are being done in war, and like I don't want to go so much into details about our program. I will just leave the time, maybe you have some questions about that, because like I just appear here and I don't know like what what you might be interested in. So if you have any questions, so I could go deeper in any like any parts of that program, and I can describe some parts more deeply. And so right now we have 153 kids, and most of them are from Tajikistan and Chechnya, and we also have children from Central Asia, from Middle East, from Sub-Saharan Africa, and also from Eastern Europe, such as Ukraine and Belarus. Or Russia, and they are also like observing the initiatives that has just popped up recently with the broke like when the war has started in Ukraine, in Warsaw. Like the question is that because if the kid should attend the Polish school and should follow the Polish program and learn in Polish language, or they should continue learning in Ukrainian, what is provided mostly online. We are also running the hostel for mother and children, and most of the children there, those who attend the school, they are learning online, and they are just connecting with their school friends, who are, some of them are still in Ukraine, some are in Poland, some are in Germany. So, you know, so it is also the psychological question here that you know, that they are, that some of children, they know that their friends are still in Ukraine, and Ukrainian children, they know that that they are jealous of for them who are already out and are living in other countries. So that's the way to learn still in Ukrainian language. There are also Ukrainian language schools that have been just opened in Warsaw. One of them, like there is a school that was operating from about 5 years or more, the School for Ukrainian Diaspora, and they were following the Ukrainian ministry program, and recently they have just opened a new class for newcomers, and they are also in the process of opening the like their branch in another district of Warsaw, and both the class for newcomers and the branch is financing by like not by parents, but it's more like, I don't know, crowdfunding or donors, like, but it should be free for the students. And there is also the school that was open by and run by 2 NGOs, one Catholic NGO and one NGO that is like the migrant NGO, Ukrainian migrants NGOs. And they opened a school that is also following the Ukrainian program, and there are the Ukrainian teachers. Oh, sorry, I just need to switch it off. Okay, sorry. And they are also Ukrainian teachers, and they have about 250 students there, and they're gonna operate till end of this school year. And I was just yesterday talking with the head of one of these NGOs, and he said that they also don't know what they should do, if they should continue, or if the children should enroll to Polish schools. But you know, the situation is very unstable. So also the parents cannot plan to which school the children should go. And they are pretty, because you know the needs are way bigger, but they are pretty, all of the initiatives when where the Ukrainian children can learn in Ukrainian language in formal way, and the other initiatives that are being organized are the daycare centers for Ukrainian children that are run by both Ukrainian and Polish speaker child like the people who are like activists or whatever, like people who are just playing with them and teaching them language in a way. And they are being opened by different culture organizations or institutions or NGOs and so on and so on. So we are also running one day care center like this. So then you have also these day care centers, but they cannot replace the real school. So what is most challenging, I think, is that instability of the situation, that nobody knows how long it's gonna take. Nobody knows if the children should end up this year according to Ukrainian program, or they should switch into Polish program. And you know, if they finally, if they stay longer here and they are just being kept in Ukrainian program, not learning Polish language, but maybe they will come back. So yeah, so I think also that the holidays, like that we should prepare for the holidays, and that we should prepare the language. Polish language courses for children for the holidays, and I haven't heard about many initiatives that are planned of that kind, and I think it's something that could be needed. Yeah, but it's what I mean is that that the situation is new also for us, that till now that we work mostly with those who were staying in Poland or who were planning to stay in Poland, and the situation right now is pretty different. So I will just check the questions that you might have. No, this is to Ms. Dominika, sorry. So they are not to me, okay. Yeah. So maybe you have some questions right now.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think it was somehow voiced from outside the system, the formal system, and some kind of attempt to show us how to supplement this system, how this supplementation works or might work. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so we have like 15 minutes for questions. We have asked you to ask your questions in chat, and we got some. So I believe I should actually read some of them. So we have a question from Gozi Uzomah from the University of Nigeria, and this is a question for Marta. If many Ukrainian kids are studying online in Ukrainian language and curriculum, does it not hamper their integration to the Polish society? Or do you think the kids study online in their mother tongue because they are not expected to live in Poland permanently? So Marta, a few words on that?
Thank you for this question. So as Marcia already said, Ukrainian refugees are in kind of limbo. They don't know what to do. Their situation is uncertain. And this is one side of the problem. And the other side of the problem, why I think those children and their parents decide not to go into the Polish education system is because the Polish education system is not prepared to host so many of them. So of course it's trigger a lot of discrimination because Polish and Ukrainian students cannot integrate together, as Ukrainians are just only in their system. I think now during the summer holiday and the summer break, maybe some initiative, and I know I will add to this in Warsaw, there will be some initiative to teach Ukrainian children Polish language during the summer. I think local authorities are preparing such program. So I think on one side, to answer the question, on one side, it is they're learning, they're not learning Polish, so this is one side of the problem. But I also think that if all of them would go to Polish school, they would also not be able to learn Polish language because there is not enough teachers to do so. So I think for now on, it's like staying in the Ukrainian, at least until the end of this school year, staying in Ukrainian system is better idea rather to go into Polish school that are not prepared.
Okay, thank you. And actually, we have another question for you, Marta, from Irina Mutzelburg. Thank you, Marta, for this insightful presentation. Could you specify how many cultural assistants there are in the whole of Poland? For which countries of origin do they exist, and at which schools? Is it a pilot project or widespread?
So it's hard to say how many of them there is. I would say that in Polish educational law, there is possibility to hire a teacher assistant who would be this multicultural or cultural assistant. However, before the war, it was not so common, and in general, NGOs were hiring those people and they were working then in schools. But according to law, it should be schools who hire them. So before the war, there was not so many of them. In bigger cities like Gdańsk, Warsaw, Poznań, Wrocław, Krakow, there were some, but not so many. I would say around 10 to 20 people in a city. But for now, after the war, there is need for those people. And I would just add, this is not the pilot project, I would just add that everybody who speaks the language of the minority, so it doesn't matter if it's Ukrainian, Chechen, Tajik, or so on, if you speak the language of the minority, you can be an assistant, so you don't have the teaching training to do so. So it opens the door for many people to be hired and follow the law regulations. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we'll try to go to other questions. Okay. So we have a question for Jolanta, which was actually answered by her on the chat, so I won't read that. The other question that appears here is from Gazi Luis Zoma to Dominika. How do you use culture to promote education among the students, like intercultural events? When are migrant students allowed to mix with Polish students to help strengthen the migrant students' proficiency in Polish language?
I've actually already answered that, but
but you can, repeat
multitasking. Yeah, but generally, I can just gist it up. Generally, they don't wait to be allowed to mix. The idea of mixing is just from the very beginning, and the cultural equivalent is, in our opinion, our school's attitude is to just have this open dialogue and openness around, so as much as possible to promote the culture that comes in and the culture that is here in our school. So this is just depends on the people, on the type of personality the person has, on the maturity it has. So it's very, very fluent situation, but as fast as possible, the dialogue is essential here.
Okay, I think you got another question on ethical issues. The question, how do you make sure that children who are asked to help with children are not overused? This is a question from Angela Popek.
Yeah, already also
yeah.
able, but to be honest, this is a very delicate subject, but like I said, we never tell anybody to do something. We ask them to, and it's voluntary. And they know, all of our students know that whenever they feel overwhelmed and they think it's just too much for them, they can just tell us and we won't have any problem with that. We will seek for another help. And we are there to exchange them the moment they feel overwhelmed with a task. However, it hasn't happened yet. It's still the very beginning. I can imagine that it might pop up later. But for now, we just think that, you know, the open dialogue and the fact that you can always say no and you can always say stop, and it deals with both sides.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. So there is a question from Facebook from Justyna Szałajska to Maria Teresa. I think it was also answered, but perhaps Maria Teresa would like to elaborate a bit more on that. The question goes like that: the role of the EMLO seems to be very important, but how can only 30 EMLOs manage to assist all those who need assistance? Is the number of EMLOs enough for Ottawa? I am also curious about their work and practice. How often do they visit schools? How often they organize meetings with parents and children? And how this program is financed?
Yes, as I mentioned, this program is funded by Citizenship and Immigration Canada and the two boards of education, the public board and the Catholic board. And what happened is the school boards share the information of schools with us. So we know where, because the schools have ESL programs, English as a second language, and so we know that most vulnerable students or immigrant students are in certain areas, so we try to allocate MLOs in those schools, and they go there on a regular basis, and we share the information of families with us. So there is a communication between teachers, between the parents, and MLOs are at the schools, basically. So they go to meetings and they call the parents. So they are they are considered as a school staff, and they have access to information of families. That's the way we work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And there is one final question from the chat. It comes from Angela Popik again. So how the cultural assistants are trained, supported, controlled, and monitored. There are cases in my experience when assistants did more harm than help though. Can you comment? And actually we have an answer from Marta, making me somehow unnecessary, yeah? But perhaps, Marta, you would like to comment on that.
Yeah, I would just briefly said that those cultural assistants who are hired by NGOs, and this is the most common practice, are trained, they have supervisions, their work is monitored. The issue is that according to law, you can hire, school can hire anybody who just know the language. So we need to now focus on this to find specialists, and the good practice is to just hire somebody with pedagogical training, and I think it will be done.
Okay, thank you very much. And there seems to be a question for all of the speakers, actually. So according to you, what is the better way of providing education to refugee forced migrant children, taking into account their future, to include them in a system with a national curriculum of the host country, or to provide them with opportunities to follow the curriculum of their own country of origin? Of course, in a situation of uncertainty, when we don't know when the war or conflict in their country of origin ends. So it's a question to everybody. So perhaps we might start from so Marysia, perhaps you might start with that.
Yeah, like, to be honest, I don't have the answer for this. Like, you know, when because this is the question, if the conflict, like if the kid can come back to the country of origin or not. So if I really don't know. Like I totally understand it also depends on the individual situation of the children. For example, our social worker who just came from Ukraine, her kid is just finishing the primary school and will have a test at the end of primary school. So it's pretty obvious that it's a way better for him to finish this school learning online in Ukrainian school and follow the Ukrainian curriculum. But like I'm sorry, but I really don't have the answer for this question. And that's also like the question that I think that we all are asking right now. Yeah. So maybe somebody who someone of us knows better and have better ideas, because I'm sorry, but I don't know.
Well, it is in fact a tricky question. So perhaps Aislinn, would you like to take the floor and try to answer that?
Sure. I mean, I suppose the first thing that comes to mind is how advanced in relation to educational opportunities Poland is to be able to offer, to be able to give a choice that you can either follow one particular system over another. I suppose in relation to thinking about the future, and I suppose this is perhaps pessimistic, but I think in 2015 we hoped the crisis in the refugee Syrian crisis would come to an end, but we know history teaches us that this will always happen until there are significant change in the way that the world is currently operated. And taking that as our baseline, and speaking as an educationalist above everything else, schools should be places which the state school, the state provision in state education provision should be available for all, and it should be accessible to all. So I appreciate that means that there's a great pressure put on schools to respond to diverse needs, and I fully understand that. But I think if we're in a situation where people are going to be moving, forced to move, temporarily moving or permanently moving, I think all schools need to start with, looking at the rights of the child and making sure that the educational provision that they have is as open and as accessible to everybody, regardless of whether they're there for a week or regardless of whether they're there for 10 years. I know that is an idealistic position, but you've asked, and that's my answer.
Thank you very much for this, I think, important voice. Maria Teresa, what do you say?
No, sorry, I am just trying to send the communication about Ontario. Can you repeat the question?
The question was quite general. According to you, what's the better way of providing education to refugee or forced migrant children, taking into account their future, to include them into a system with a national curriculum of the host country, or to provide them with opportunities to follow the curriculum of their own country of origin? Of course, in the situation of uncertainty, when we don't know when the war or conflict in the country or origin ends.
So, what I have been seeing here in Canada is, no, they follow the curriculum of education of Canada. They follow the curriculum of education of Canada. What happens is there are a lot of accommodation in terms of language, and also welcoming that, I mean, I cannot emphasize more. The most important field in here is try to welcome the newcomer, try to welcome the refugee, try to create a sense of belonging, creating all the social possibilities for the child, for the teenager to integrate with mainstream kids, with mainstream society, because the academic component goes as much as the person feels integrated, as much as the person feels respected. But one of the things, for example, as I mentioned it, in here, people are encouraged to learn the mother language. Parents are encouraged to speak the native language at home. Why? Because that creates a sense of belonging. So the two components, as I was mentioning, the provision of language skills, but of course, other components, the social components, so important. And this is what our settlement agencies are. We promote all kinds of programs for integration. And as I mentioned it, welcoming, because academic, everyone knows what needs to be done for a child to learn in academics, right? So the equity component is very important. So, and the social integration, I would say.
Well, thank you for that. Dominika, any last thoughts?
Okay, I won't be you won't be surprised if I say that, in my opinion, it can't be answered in one way. There are too many conditions to be met, and it's way too complicated, the situation here. And honestly, believe me that ever since the situation has happened, we know all what I'm talking about. We've been talking about this in our staff room every single day, mentioning the new students, what's better for them. And still we haven't come up with the right answer. So I would support the fact that what we can do for now is to just welcome them, make them feel comfortable, safe, and then wait for the rest, for them being prepared to actually study and learn. I guess for now that's it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank
and Marta?
I would just add one more thing, because I think in this question there is lack of one important thing. So we should, the important thing is to learn Polish language, no matter if they will follow the Ukrainian curriculum online or they will go to Polish school and follow Polish curriculum. The most important thing is to give them possibility to learn Polish language, no matter if they will stay or they will go back to Ukraine, because the worst thing is to study curriculum in the language you don't understand. So it's more about the learning language than certain curriculum, because this is the other thing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's time to sum it up. So Eva?
Thank you so much. Like usually in the end, there is more and more questions. So I think it would be great to be able to elaborate on Ukrainian schools right now, what's their role in such situation and how do they operate in Poland right now. But I also agree that the best way to integrate is just to give the ability to choose and also to be welcomed by the mainstream society and together in schools. So there are many, many questions about ethnic schools in that point. And I know so little about how Ukrainian schools operate in, for example, Warsaw right now, but maybe that's the topic for another session. And I would like to thank you all for your insights and to present your cases. It was very informative for me, as I also do the research about second generation kids in Germany. And hopefully we can meet next Friday when we will discuss the employees market and migrant situation in the context of Ukrainian war, the war in Ukraine. So thank you very much. And I hope we can stay in touch.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.